ייאמר לעולם, החול וחיים, רשרוש של המים, ברוק השמיים, תפילת אדם, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am Rabbi Joshua Greenbaum from New Jersey, but I have a more important moniker today, and that is I was Ron's nephew. And so it is truly an honor to be here with each and every one of you, because while he was certainly my Uncle Ron, he was family to each and every person that was here. And so we are here to be able to try and process the moment in which we find ourselves, the suddenness of it all, the fact that it doesn't quite feel real. And our tradition has a way of processing that, not a way of explaining it, not a way of trying to lessen the pain that we all feel, but instead we hearken back on thousands of years of tradition. And whether you believe that tradition came from God, God's self, or whether you believe it was just the best thinking of humanity thousands of years ago, something told the Jewish people that in moments like this, in our lowest of the lows, that we shouldn't be alone. And so we hearken back to all of that, and we gather together as a community, our community that is here with us in this moment, the community that will surround us in this evening and throughout the coming days and weeks and months. But we do so keeping Ron's life and his memory and his legacy alive through everything that we share about him, through all of the stories that we will surely tell, for all those moments that we bring to mind in this moment. We remember Ron and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to his family and to all of his extended friends and family. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. And so we begin our service with a recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Ron's life with the millennial-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, Hishem Adonai Mevarech. God gives, God takes away. Blessed is the name of God. Gather the stars if you wish it so. Gather the songs and keep them. Gather the faces of women, gather for keeping years and years, and then loosen your hands, let go, and say goodbye. Let the stars and the songs go, let the faces and the years go. Loosen your hands and say goodbye. You who heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds, grant comfort and consolation to these mourners as we face our grief. Fill our lives with acts of loving kindness and truth which serve as a genuine memorial to our dear Ron. The deep bond of love will remain unbroken. Throughout the day today and into this evening, we will pull from the words of the psalmists. They were not liturgists. They didn't create prayers. Instead, they were the poets. They tried to figure out how we take the feeling inside of us in our hearts at this moment and how we add words to that. And so we read from the Psalms today, beginning with Psalm 23, which many think isn't part of the Jewish faith tradition, but does come all the way back from the Tanakh, where we read, Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in the right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. V'kol zman v'et v'kol chefetz. There's a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born and a time for dying, a time for planting and a time for uprooting, a time for destroying and a time for healing, a time for tearing down and a time for building up, a time for weeping, a time for laughing, a time for wailing, and a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing and a time for refraining from embrace, a time for keeping and a time for discarding, a time for tearing and a time for sowing, a time for silence and a time for speaking. 30 years ago, on the occasion of my becoming a bar mitzvah, so I just dated myself, my Uncle Ron triumphantly made his way back to New Jersey. Multiple pieces of bright yellow luggage in tow. One might have assumed, you've traveled with him before, one might have assumed he was staying for weeks. But it wasn't just the full accompaniment of outfit changes, including, yes, the royal blue waist-length tailcoat he wore to the service itself. Ron had a mission. Because inside that luggage were 6 4-foot-tall fire engine red foam core letters, along with the matching red dowels, hot glue gun, and everything else needed to construct a gigantic welcome sign spelling out my name. The hassle of preparing and packing, carrying and assembling all of it meant nothing for him. Ron was going to pour every ounce of himself into making the moment shine brighter for me and for everyone else that walked in that room. That was my Uncle Ron. There are those who lean on the familiar adages of things happen for a reason or God has a plan, but I've never subscribed to that line of logic. But I do believe that the universe, our collective tissue of consciousness, God, has a way of pulling back the curtain from time to time. And so I don't take it as mere coincidence that Ron took his final breaths at the very moment that we welcomed in this Hebrew month of Kislev, the month that will soon bring Chanukah, when Judaism turns our hearts towards celebrating light, because we lost someone who was pure light. And not gentle glow either. My Uncle Ron was a burst of color and sound and sparkle and presence. When he entered a room, you didn't just notice it, you felt it. He lived life out loud, unapologetically, joyfully, and fully. Ron loved fashion, loved trends, loved anything that made him feel young and vibrant and seen. He could walk into a room in an outfit that only he could pull off. And somehow, rather than rolling our eyes, we all smiled because it was so him. He didn't dim himself for anyone. He didn't shrink to fit the moment. He expanded it. He brought the party wherever he went. And yet beneath all that flash, deep in his neshama, his soul, lived the truest, most generous heart. For all his boldness, he was profoundly selfless. He showed up for people, not quietly, not subtly, but with the same passion he brought to everything else. His joy came from lifting others up, from making someone's day better, from offering kindness, humor, or simply his presence. There was nothing halfway about his love. Just this past September, he spent a few wonderful days with me, my wife, my girls, days now etched in our hearts. He delighted being with them. They delighted in him. He told stories, made us laugh, lit up every table at which we sat. Those days feel like a final gift. The last opportunity for my daughters to experience the full, glorious force of his personality and spirit. And they loved him for it. If this month of Kislev teaches us to bring light into the world, to illuminate the darkness of these cold, long nights, then Ron reminds us that we need not wait for the candles of Hanukkah to brighten our lives, to keep him with us, to will his legacy into a world so in need of that light. We can do what he did. We can wake up every morning with the steady intention, asking ourselves, who can I light up today? Who can I make smile? How can I bring joy into someone's life? Where can I shine my light today? Few of us live that way. Ron exuded it. As we begin the difficult goodbye, may we honor him by carrying forward that light, loudly when needed, boldly when the world feels dim, generously always. May we find strength in the joy he gave us, in the confidence he modeled, in the laughter he sparked. Zikrono livracha, may his memory be a blessing. May the light he brought into this world continue dancing and shining, sparkling all of us who were lucky enough to have loved him. And may you all, God willing, be lucky enough to have an Uncle Ron in your life. Amen. It is an honor to invite up two people to help share their thoughts and memories of their brother. That will be first Ron's oldest brother, Mark, my father, followed by his other brother, Doug.
How do I follow that? Some of you might know I'm a chemist, and I was prepared to give a chemistry lecture today. And I thought Ron would probably say, go for it. He would. You know, if you met Ron, you knew Ron. That's the way it was, right? There was no halfway. You either knew him or you hadn't met him yet, but you will. And he was truly one of a kind. It's amazing to me, he literally knew hundreds of people, but even more amazing, hundreds of people knew him. And I wish I could claim the same thing. I don't think Ron has an enemy in the world. I've never met somebody who had anything bad to say about Ron. And that was his gift. And he gave that gift to anybody he met, and we cherish that. I'll miss that booming introduction. Hi, I'm Ron, when he entered the room. Did anybody never hear that? I mean, that's just the way he was, right? And part of the joy he took was saying that and knowing that he met somebody new that he hadn't met before, and there's going to be some kind of joy between the two of those people, him and whoever he was meeting. Ron was 6 years younger than I was, and younger than Doug and I. When we were kids, Doug and I were sports nuts. We played every sport. We wanted every sports thing. And Ron wasn't. Anything but. By the time I went off to college, he was just entering 7th grade. And so I still have vivid memories, though, of watching him go off to 7th grade dressed spectacularly and thinking, who goes to school dressed like that? Well, he did. And he didn't think twice about it. It was just the way he was. And but it wasn't until later, much later in life, that I really got to know Ron better because we had that age difference. And when he had his heart attack and Doug and I came out to Cleveland, there was a lot of dedicated time that we spent talking to each other about things we had never talked about before. And that was a reward for me, and I think it was a reward for him. Even in his pain, you know, he had a heart attack, and I told him, the one thing you did right is you had it in Cleveland. If you're going to have a heart attack, have it here. Nobody wants one, but, you know, he was in a great deal of pain, but we still spent joyous moments together, discovering more about Ron, and he discovering more about us. Ron never hid the fact that he was gay. He was gay, but not over the top gay. He would tell you that. He announced it at Thanksgiving to a family gathering at my home one year, to which I replied, well, what exactly is the news here? I mean, we knew this, for a long time. I remember a Hanukkah when Doug and I, when we were kids, we asked for G.I. Joe and baseball mitts and baseball bats, and Ron asked for an easy bake oven. And we thought, what is going on here? Because, as a 8-year-old, what do you know about these things, right? But that's what he wanted, and my parents were so understanding. He's like, if that's what he wants, that's what he gets. And they just accepted all of that. And by the way, what he wanted was that easy bake oven, which he held on to, I think, for a long time. But he never cooked after that. When COVID first broke out, I called Ron and said, this is going to be a long haul. You're going to go crazy if you're in your little apartment all by yourself. You can't go out. Remember those days? It seems like it was so long ago, but it wasn't. 2020. So I said, come stay with Lyndall and I. And I drove to Cleveland and picked him up. It was really strange because I was the only car on Route 80, the only car. And I grabbed Ron and he said, well, this will be for a couple of weeks. And he stayed with us for, 4 months, I think. And it was great having him with us. He worked out of my office. I gave him my office because I was retired then and he was still working. And he brought his CJN computer, his phone, mounds of paper. You can't imagine how much paper he brought. Bags of paper. And I thought, okay, he's got this figured out. And he would answer the phone, CJN West. Okay. In the last few years, Ron experienced some of the best times and some of the worst. And on the outside, he looked spectacularly fit, but on the inside, his body was giving him problems that he wasn't aware of. He had a heart attack. He had epileptic seizures. He had both hips replaced. But he took that like a trooper. I mean, he just knew he had to do it. And even though Doug and I had to maybe lead him by the hand at times to get help for that, he did. And so we both spent a lot more time in Cleveland, and that was very rewarding for me. And I came out for his retirement party at the CJN, and that was a wonderful thing. And actually, thanks to the CJN people, Kevin and the others, that day was also Ron Greenbaum Day in this town, in this city. The mayor proclaimed it, so we actually have a plaque that says that. So it's shocking and heartbreaking to know you're gone, Ron, my brother. But I have clear, vivid memories we made together, and I'll cherish those forever. So rest in peace, Ron. And I want to thank all of you for coming today. Some of you came from out of town. Some of you are on the webcast. Thank you, wherever the camera is. And I love you, Ron.
Good afternoon. Before I say a couple of remarks I wrote down, Josh told me when Ron was visiting him a couple of months ago, he would sit down with Josh's daughters and drink chocolate milk, put the syrup in and stir it around. When growing up, Ron's favorite breakfast by far was strawberry milk. You put the powder in there, mix it all up, and Pop-Tarts. He lived on strawberry milk and Pop-Tarts throughout his childhood, but still somehow was a world-class bodybuilder and everything else. That's cool. As Mark said, and you guys know, first of all, thanks for coming out, especially on a lousy day, on a lousy situation here. But everyone knows Ron, and Ron knows everyone. Look at today's turnout on a lousy day, and the webcast folks too. People on the webcast, thank you. Ron treated everyone alike, friends, family, security guard, bank teller. It didn't matter what your lot was in life. He treated you the same, which is beautifully, and that's something that we should all treasure. Ron was totally upbeat. He wasn't a glass half full guy. He was a glass overflowing guy. And again, that's unique to most of us in the room, including myself. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. That was not Ron's actual hair on top of his head. I'm sorry to break the news on such a day like today. And you know how we knew Tammy, thank you, Tammy, for all the help you gave us. When Ron, we had to set up passwords for Ron after his heart attack on various medical, Cleveland Clinic, and everything. And every password included love my hair. So every password, and Tammy, you will concur, love my hair 39, love my hair, ... So please don't break into his accounts. But if you use love my hair, you're 90% into all of his accounts. Sorry. I used to say Ron really loved sort of leave it to beaver time, for those of you old enough in the audience. That's the way Ron lived. He loved cash, $60 every few days from the ATM machine. Debit card and even credit card were, he wasn't going to do that unless you kind of beat him into submission. But everything was $60 at a time on the ATM. Checks, as I was telling someone before the service, when Ron moved into East Haven, he found out you can't leave a check on the door. They only accept online debit cards. Ron was sweating bullets, almost regretting moving in, but I got him through that and said, Ron, I've already set up your bank account, so you just push a button once a month. And so he was relieved by that. The smartphone was only a phone. When I came down here, up here, one time after surgery, I said, Ron, let's use Google Maps. Pretend you don't know where the hospital is. Well, I know where the hospital is, he said. I said, pretend you don't. So I want you to see what Google Maps, because they can tell you construction and accidents. So I said, okay, Google Maps says turn left here. Ron says, no, we got to turn right. That's a shortcut. And I said, Ron, we're pretending we don't know. Next stop, go by the stop sign, turn right. No, Ron said, turn left. And I said, this isn't going to work. So we aborted that mission early on. The other thing about Ron and Leave It to Beaver, or that roughly, is he sent greeting cards. And by the way, someone tell Hallmark that they lost an incredible, beautiful customer today, or a couple of days ago. He sent greeting cards to, birthdays, anniversaries, and all kinds of functions. And that was Ron. You weren't going to get him to text a hello, happy birthday. He'd call your phone and sing you happy birthday, of course. Or he'd send you a greeting card, but not a text. That wouldn't do. Ron leaves behind being a role model for all of us, or I'll say myself, kindness, respect, and love. And that's what Ron was all about. And if we can use some of that as a guiding post every day, that'd be fantastic. And Ron now joins in heaven two people who he loved, which is our mom and dad. And by now, Ron has already said, hi, I'm Ron, to 200 strangers up there. We know that. And with that, I'll say thank you for coming. And we all in this room and everyone on the webcast and the family here loved Ron dearly, and we always will.
God heals the brokenhearted, binds up their wounds. God reckons the number of stars, giving each one its name. Great and full of power is God, whose wisdom is beyond reckoning. God gives courage to the lowly, brings hope to those bereft. And so may God always be with us. In our tradition, we don't know what comes next. No one's ever come back to tell us the story. We don't pretend to have an answer either. We call it the Olam Haba'ah, the world to come, and we're told stories about what it's going to be like. Because we are believers that we are given a holy vessel in our body which navigates this earthly world, but the body itself is just a shell to house the soul. We are believers in the soul in Judaism. And in these intermediary periods of someone's passing, the moment in which they are buried, we believe the soul is a bit in transport. It's in this middle phase of finding its way to the source, whatever that might be. And so we offer a prayer in this moment called the El Malei Rachamim, in which we ask for safe passage of that soul to find its way to the Olam Haba'ah. And just a quick note, as I was talking to my dad and my uncle before, we were trying to think of Ron's Hebrew name. It's traditional that we chant that included with the El Malei Rachamim. And we couldn't think of it. Then we realized that the name Ron is a Hebrew derivative. And if you need to have any belief in the predestiny of things in our world, it should be that Ron in Hebrew means joy or a song. Together we rise as we chant the words of the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim shochen baromim chamseh menucha nechona tachet kanfei hashchina im kiddushim u'torim כזוהר הרקיע מצירים את נשמת רון בן שמו וקלרה שחלך לעולמו בעל הרחמים יסתר בסדר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצורך חיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו ויונח שלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. May Ron's memory be for us a blessing. May we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Ron's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace, as together we say, Amen. May the Holy One of blessing, from whom all things come and to whom all things return, give us light and peace on this day of grief and mourning. And may our service of memory for Ron bring comfort and strength.
Sprinkling a little. Gentlemen, lift up, please. Forward. So if you're going to the cemetery, we're going to Mount Cemetery. Turn your car, we're going to black and we down. Take a left. And plate. You'll see two rollers there at the